Hi there. Today we're going to be looking at this really simple workflow that shows how you can connect Airtable with Make. Really suitable for beginners, there's no coding required. Really good way to get your hands on these two tools and really start making things in a simple way. In our last video, we were looking at how you connect Notion with Make, and this is going to be a very similar process. Maybe after this video, you can go back and check out the other video that we did on Notion and Make and see how that process is a bit different. And specifically, what we'll be doing here is we'll be looking at an inventory, which might be used in any kind of store or retail or e-commerce setting. And what Make's going to be doing is monitoring for changes within that inventory, deciding whether to take action based on what that change is, and then it's going to be generating email stock alerts when the inventory is too low. So this kind of automation can be great because it allows you to not have to worry about constantly checking your inventory to see if there are changes there. You can set up that automatic stock alert so that you're alerted to those changes automatically whenever they happen. So that'll give you a taste of a couple of different ways of doing things within Airtable and Make.
Now, here we are on Airtable, and I've got my inventory set up here. The previous video, which was showing an inventory manager in Notion, it's essentially the same database setup in Airtable. So you've got lots of standard fields that you'd see in any inventory manager. The ones I want to really focus on here are the quantity in stock here, so number of items in stock at this point. Reorder level, that's really useful when we're looking at when to create alerts based on whether or not an item needs to be restocked or not. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is this field called stock health. And stock health has a little formula behind it. The way this works is it will read that value for quantity in stock and reorder level, and it just uses those to generate these values. Let me have a little look behind the scenes at the formula here. If quantity in stock equals 0, output this out of stock reorder now message. If it's less than or equal to reorder level, officially it's low, so we want to reorder now. Now this one is, if the quantity in stock is less than the reorder level times 1.1. Now what does that mean? You can customize that to be whatever you want, but essentially the idea is if the quantity in stock is getting to be low, so if it's almost at that reorder stage, you can trigger a special alert that will give you that heads up to say things are getting low. And then the final condition there is just the default, so stock levels are okay. Let's see this in action now. So let's take this cotton fringe throw. Okay, so it's currently sitting at stock levels are okay. There's 20 items in stock and the reorder level's at 10. Now, if that was to go down to 11, it's changed to getting low. And so that shows once it's within 10%, it changes. That's just showing how the stock health field works. And before we go into Make, I just wanted to show you this automations tab up here, because this will give us an overview of the automations that are built into Airtable. The reason why it's worth taking the time to do this in Make is because, yes, there are lots of interesting things that we can do, and we can connect it up with lots of different apps, as you can see here. But with dedicated automation software like Make, you can really go much further. You can push something into maybe a fulfillment system that you have set up, or a marketing system, and ultimately drive those processes to be more efficient. So with that in mind, let's move on into Make and set up the automation in there. Now here we are over in Make, and I'm just going to create a new scenario right now. Give it a suitable name. Okay, and click here to add our Airtable module. The actual module we want to get here is watch records, and what this does, as you can see here, returns all newly created or updated records in a view, and it requires a certain field here. So I'm going to go into that in a second, but if we go in here, the first thing you're going to have to do in the Airtable module, if you've never set this up before, you need to establish a connection. So there are a couple of options I just wanted to talk about here. So you have this Airtable token or key option, and you've got OAuth as well. Essentially, in most cases now you want to go for OAuth, and that just uses your standard Airtable credentials. Assuming you have an account already with Airtable, you can just enter those in there, and that will get you right in. Token or key is just a slightly different way of accessing it. I think for most situations you want to go with OAuth. So just going to go out of there, and it should be set up already. So I'm going to choose my base as it's known in Airtable. So this is the inventory tracker that we had been looking at a few minutes ago. The table is inventory items. Now trigger field. Let's go into how this watch records works. It's watching the records in your database, and then it's triggering this scenario when there are changes in that database. Now there is a tricky thing to mention here, which is this trigger field, and you'll see on the text there it mentions that you need a last modified time field set up. So let's go back into Airtable really quick to see what that actually means then. So you can see this has already been set up here, this last stock updated field, and so what it's actually doing is it's monitoring this quantity in stock field, and then it's basically time stamping anytime there's a change to that quantity in stock field. And this field is really, really important for the trigger that we're using in Make, because it's taking this time value, and when it's changed, it's checking that against the previous value it had for that, and then using that to understand whether or not to bring it into Make. So you can set this up to be a created time or a last modified time field, but it is really important that you have that in place. So going to use this last stock update field. So this limit is the number of records, the maximum number of records that will be pulled into Make, assuming that that number of records has actually changed since the last time you ran the scenario. View, I'm going to choose the all items view. I only have one view in the database at the moment, but you might have several views, so you just want to make sure you're choosing the right one there. And I think that's everything I need set up now, so I'm going to hit save. And then it's asking you when you want to start. So basically from what time do you want the scenario to check for new data? So I'm going to just choose from now on. And then we have our trigger in place, so I just want to do another module that's going to act as our action that we're taking. And the alert that we're going to put in place now is an email alert. There's lots of different options for what you could do, but I'm going to concentrate on emails right now. So I'm going to do send an email. There are a couple of different connections set up here already, so I'm going to choose this SMTP connection because it's a bit more straightforward. This SMTP connection requires a little bit of initial setup the first time you run it, and it's the kind of setup that you would do on any email client, or maybe if you set up email on your phone for the first time. So it requires going to your domain provider or whoever you get your email from, just following their instructions to pull in the right settings that you need to set up email. I'm not going to save the message after sending, so I'm just going to leave that to no. Add a recipient, so the recipient I'm going to add is, and then in the subject I'm going to do, so this is the subject for the actual email. You can see these records coming up here, so these are fields. You might recognize them from the Airtable database. These are all values that you can insert into any of these fields, so you might have an email address coming from Airtable that you might want to put it into the email address field here. You could use one of these values in your subject. I'm just going to keep the subject really straightforward here. I'm going to do plain text content type, and then in here I'm going to do so you have a new stock alert from your inventory, so the item, and we want to place the item name here, and this is when we're going to pull in these dynamic values that are coming from Airtable into the content of the email. So the item name now has the status, and then that's where we use our stock health. And I'm going to save that and run for the first. Actually, what we want to do is just before we run, want to make sure there's a value coming from Airtable. So make a change to the stock so that we can see values coming through. So I'm going to take bamboo stirring spoon set. I'm going to update this so that it is changed to stock levels. Okay. Now if I run this once, what we'll do, that's a successful value. Now that would throw up an error if there were any errors, and you'd be able to go into that and debug it. And if I go into my email now, you should be able to see, yeah, we've got the item bamboo stirring spoon set has the status stock levels okay. So that's great. That shows that the scenario is working as we'd expect. Now you might have noticed that the status here is stock levels okay. We want our stock alert system to actually throw up errors when there's a problem. So how do we ensure that the alerts that we're sending are only when the stock is low or is out of stock? For that, we want to use this filter, and this can be set up between any two modules in Make, and it acts as any kind of filter you might have seen in other apps, you know, just like Airtable actually. And I'm going to call this filter and I'm going to do two conditions, and the conditions we want are to check the item, sorry, not the item name. What we want to do is check the stock health field, and I'm going to use this does not contain case insensitive. Oops, I mean to do that. So we want to put in low, and we've got an or, so it's checking one thing or the other. And again, we want to check stock health, and we want to set that to does not contain. Oh, that's wrong. We want to set that to contains case insensitive. Just realize this is wrong, so that should be contains case insensitive as well. And we want this to be no. And what it's doing here is checking the stock health value that's being passed through, and if it contains low, and there's two situations where it might be low, and there's one situation where it might be no. And so between those two conditions, we're filtering out all of the values where there's an issue with the stock, and that triggers the need for an alert. Okay, so I'm going to hit save there. Let's go back to Airtable, and so let's maybe go to Bergamo Citrus Reed Diffuser, and this is currently stock levels okay. If we take that down to 6, that's a low reorder now. Hit run once. Check the email. Sure enough, status low. That's coming through nicely. What happens if we maybe go for cable and throw blanket? If we want to put that up to 20, and that will take it from an out of stock to stock levels okay. Let's run that and see if it's being filtered properly. And you can see got that 0 value, which means that it didn't pass the filtering, which is perfect. And if we check our email, no email coming through. So we can see that the filter is working nicely there, and this alert system is working just as we want it to. Okay, so we've got our alert set up in Make, and as a little bonus now, I'm going to show you a slightly different way of doing this, which might give you some ideas about different ways that you can have Airtable interact with Make in the future. And this way is going to use the filter views here in Airtable to do a little bit of filtering on the Airtable side rather than doing it in Make. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up a new view here. So I go down to grid, and I want to just call this out of stock items. And this is what it's done is by default it's created a new database view, so a new display of items within the same database. And what we can do is apply a special filter to this. How do we do that? Right, well, we're going to use the stock health percentage field here instead of stock health message. And let's have a little look at what's going on behind the scenes on stock health percentage. So what we're seeing here is a value of 0 means you're right at the reorder level, okay? The negative numbers mean you're below the reorder level, and positive numbers mean you're over the reorder level. And so this stock health percentage is just a quick alternative to the stock health message to see how your stock's doing. So with that in mind, I set up a new filter here. So I'm going to add the condition. So this is a bit like what we were doing in Make, isn't it? It's we're setting up conditions here that dictate what you're seeing in this view. And for item name, I'm going to choose the stock health percentage that we were just looking at. And we want to set that to 0.1. And what that means is that the stock health percentage is for any situation where the stock health percentage is less than 10% over the reorder value. So basically, in other words, it's not too near the reorder value. For those situations, we want those items to be displayed in the out of stock items view. And sure enough, already you can see that filter has been applied because we've got getting low, we've got low, we've got out of stock. We don't have any items where the stock health's okay. So that's performing the same function as the filter we did have set up in Make. And that can be just an alternative way of filtering things out. So if we move over into Make, so the question is, how do we change things here to take advantage of that, the filtering that's going on in Airtable now? And what we want to do is go back into the watch records, and we want to keep everything else the same, but we do want to change the view to be just updating their out of stock items. That is the one that we've just set up. And so what it's doing the same thing, it's watching to see if records are being added to or changing within that view. And like I say, we've got the filtering happening now in Airtable, which means we don't need it to be happening anymore in Make. Strangely enough, there's no easy way to delete the filter, but if we remove these conditions and remove the label and save that, then that's the filter deleted. So let's just make a change to our out of stock items here in Airtable. And to do that, I'm going to choose an item like, let's say, the hand-blown whiskey glass. Now its stock level is okay, so it's not appearing an out-of-stock item yet. If I change the value on that down to, let's say, 5, it's on low reorder now. And what we'll see is the hand-blown whiskey glass is now appearing on out-of-stock items. If I run the scenario and check my email, sure enough, hand-blown whiskey glass set has been pushed through. Ideal. And then just to demonstrate how the filtering is definitely working on the Airtable end, I'm going to maybe take an item like this and just reduce it down to, or actually increase it, let's say. So as you can see, that's now been removed off the out of stock list. And when we run the scenario, we can see that the item has not been pushed through. So so there's no email has arrived there. So you can choose to filter items at the Airtable end, or you can do the filtering within Make. So different ways of doing things depending on your own preferences.
We've set up a really simple way to push data from Airtable into Make and to generate those email alerts whenever the stock is low. Now, there are lots of ways to customize this to your own personal needs. So maybe instead of an email alert, it's more useful to get a Teams message or a Slack message. You could maybe push something into Google Sheets if that's where you and your team collaborate. Speaking of collaboration, there's also options like Asana, for example. Stay tuned to the channel for lots more useful information about how to create and utilize automations within your retail or e-commerce business. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next time.